Hi, in this video we're going to be converting between decimals and percentages using our rule. By the end of this video you should be able to convert between decimals and percentages and backwards and forwards. So let's have a look at converting. Alright, so the rule throughout that last video was written on top of every screen, every page, and it says to change a decimal into a percentage we need to multiply by 100. So we take this 0.23, which we know what the answer is going to be, but we want to multiply that by 100. Now the rule for multiplying a decimal by 100 is we need to move the decimal point 2 places to the right. So you see that decimal point between the 0 and the 2 right now. We need to move it to the right 2 spots. So it's just after the 3, making this 23 point. Now we don't generally leave the point there by itself. We normally add a 0 to it. But just saying 23.0 doesn't actually mean much. That point 0 is superfluous, it's extra. So what we do is we don't need that point 0. All we do is we get rid of it and we replace it with a percentage sign. So 0.23 is actually 23%. 0.05, we move the decimal point 2 spots to the right, so that decimal point is just after the 5, making it 5%. Pretty easy and pretty quick if you know what you're doing with a decimal point. Let's take 0.9 for example. If I want to move that 2 spots to the right, I'm actually moving it over a spot that is not actually there. So we pretend that there's a 0 there. So we're actually got 0.90, and if I move it 2 spots to the right, I get 90%. Same goes for 0.1. Moving it 2 spots to the right, I have to put a 0 in there if I jump something that's not there, and that gives me 10%. So it's a pretty quick and easy process for changing a decimal into a percentage without having to change into a fraction first. But what if I want to go back the other way? What if I have a percentage and I want to go back to a decimal? Well, we need to reverse the process. Now, to change a percentage to a decimal, going back, we need to divide by 100. And if we want to divide by 100, we need to come up with a rule for doing that. So I've got 15%, 20%, 8%, and 50%. I want to change these all into decimals, so I need to divide each of those by 100. Now when we divide by 100, we're actually going to do the opposite of multiplying, which means that we're going to be moving our decimal point to the 2 places to the left. Now when you look at these numbers, you might be thinking, hang on a second, there's no decimal point there. Well, technically there is. We don't generally write it, but there is a decimal point straight after the units column, in this case, straight after the 5. And what I'm going to do with that decimal point, that imaginary decimal point, is I'm going to move it 2 spots to the left. So we go 1, 2. Now, once it's on the left-hand side of that 1, we now have our decimal. We have 0.15. Now, we're not going to write 0.15. We're going to write 0.15, and we're going to remove the percentage sign because it's no longer a percentage. It's back to a decimal. Let's take a look at 8%. Now, that 8% has an imaginary decimal point just after the units column, which in this case is the 8. We're going to move it 2 spots to the left because we are changing a percentage into a decimal, and we're going to jump something that's not there. So what we do is we put in an imaginary 0, keeping our place value. So this 8% can be written as 0.08. Let's take a look at 20%. What do you think that decimal point is? It's just after the 0. Now, I'm not going to write it in, but I am going to imagine it moving 2 spots to the left, giving me 0.20. Now, as a decimal, 0.20 is correct, but we don't actually need that 0 in the end. It's extra and unnecessary, so we just write 0.2, and that's what 20% is. For the last one, 50%, I'm going to imagine my decimal point after the 0. I'm going to move it 2 spots to the left, and I'm going to get 0.5. I'm not even going to bother to write the 0 at the end of the 5. So what should you write for this video? Well, having your 2 rules for changing a decimal into a percentage and back again is a really good idea. Having something that will help you remember, like the different colors or the clouds, is also a good idea. Make sure you also have a heading, decimals and percentages, so you know what you're looking at when you're looking at your page. Having your 4 examples and the arrows that show you where the decimals go is also going to be good for you to work on when you're going through your textbook questions. And that's it. Hopefully you know how to convert between a decimal percentage by either multiplying or dividing, and you remember which one is which. Practice will help you out as well as asking questions. Good luck.